Hey everyone, Innkeeper Bytes here. I just wanted to touch base and tell you about the event I threw for the Witchwood launch. I have multiple events actually. This one was a pre-release event, so it was kind of a hype-building event, and it was called Into the Witchwood. It was a mashup of role-playing game and Hearthstone. I did a video once I recorded already, but it ended up being 15 minutes long, so I just wanted to give you a really quick short recap video of what it was that I did. So let me show you. I had previously made this Kobolds and Catacombs Fireside adventure for the last expansion, and it was like a role-playing game where you would make a character, level it up. You start at first level and you gain skill points, and it's a very cool system, and I wanted to reuse it. So I kind of rebranded it. I made it this huge plan. It ended up being 23 pages long when I was all done. It's like got like all a checklist of what I want to do for the venue and the outline, and then ended up with this Into the Witchwood as my kind of flyer graphic for the event. I wanted to make this a big event, so we ended up having between 40 and 50 people there, and hosting a role-playing game for 40 to 50 people is not easy, but I was able to do it, and I made it interactive, and it was pretty successful. I broke everyone into small groups of 4 players, and they're like little adventure parties, and they went through this really interesting adventure. I had people on stage come up with me, and they read certain dialogue parts for the characters like Hagatha and Greymane and Baku and the Lady in White. And I had this script that I wrote down here, and I broke it all down into chapters, and I made like kind of special graphics for every scene. I'll show you very quickly like what it looked like when I went through the adventure. I had this projected on the screen behind me. This is a Prezi. It's like an online presentation software like PowerPoint, but you can animate it and you can add music. So I had this, and I kind of went through my script and had an introduction into the Witchwood Fireside Adventure by me. I gave the backstory of what happened in the last adventure, and then I kind of threw everyone in here. It's going to get loud here for a second, but every time you go to a new scene, you get music. I put music behind each of these scenes, so yeah, our players. I'll take you through the story like lightning fast. They get to the tavern. They're all in a bad mood from adventuring, and then the next morning, the innkeeper sends them off to the stable to beat each other up and to kind of get their frustrations out. And they played in these casual matches against each other with decks that they built. And then when they got back to the tavern, I had a series of tavern games where they had to solve like a damage puzzle as a team, and then they had to do like these funny trivia games where they had to come up with a card dialogue or a card name that describes their last trip to the bathroom and their love life. And during this part of the game, I also had them challenge each other to see who had the most legendary cards in their deck. And if they did have the most legendary cards in their deck, then I slipped them a piece of paper that was like a special secret roll for later on in the adventure. And I'll get to that later. But then the innkeeper gets sucked through a portal into the Witchwood, and I have this custom art done by this guy Freddie Siegler in Phoenix. And if you want his contact info, let me know, and I'll hook you up. He is a great guy to commission for custom art, and this is an awesome piece. And then all heck breaks loose, and Hagatha comes through the portal, and everyone in their party is allowed to cast a single spell at them, at Hagatha. So I had people standing up and shouting out spells that they were casting, but I had like a chart, so depending on what spell they cast, there would be repercussions. So one team, for instance, cast Pyroblast, and that bounced back and burned one of their fingers off, and I rolled randomly, and it was the 7th finger, and so from that point on in the adventure, they couldn't use any 7-mana spells. Someone else tried to cast a heal on Hagatha, and it bounced back and gave them Divine Shield, so they can actually use Divine Shield minions for the rest of the encounter adventures. But I also wrapped them up in plastic wrap to simulate them being cast Divine Shield on. So I had all these curses that I had used from my curses event last year during Halloween, and I kind of reused that idea. Hagatha was unscathed and went back through the portal and challenged everyone to come after her and play her games in order to get the innkeeper back. So everyone buckled on their gear and followed Hagatha through the portal. And then there's the next scene, new music. creepy music because it's creepy Witchwood. But they had this guy sneak up on them, and he was like the automaton, and the automaton was kind of a comedic character, and he was kind of broken and cursed by Hagatha, and so he was saying how they were all going to basically die and they'd be killed by Hagatha, and they needed to watch out. And it was a very fun character to write for, actually. But he led them on to the next challenge, which was the Face Collector. This is the most twisted Photoshop I did, and it's a bunch of legs and arms and skulls, and all the players had to split into teams, and they had to make like a monster. It was like a build a monster challenge. So what they did is they built a deck of cards with 10 cards in it, and then they had to go over to the opponent's deck, and they had to put 15 cards in to sabotage their opponent. And then they came back and they put more cards in their deck. So they had this twisted deck that didn't make any sense, and they had to play each other with that deck. It was fun. And then we went on to the next chapter, where they went up these creepy stairs. And they found the Lady in White. And she's a very sad character, and she's lost her memory, but she wants knowledge, so the players are forced to do a trivia battle with her. And I had the person reading this part, I made a bunch of trivia cards for them, and I picked one person, or had one person volunteer from each of the 12 groups come up on stage in a single file line, and they all took turns answering trivia questions until they got 2 wrong, and then they were out, and the last person standing got bonus experience points. And the Lady in White faded away, and she was pleased with all the knowledge she gained. Ooh, fading away. And then we move on to the next challenge, which is more dramatic music. So they encounter a fork in the road, and one side says danger and the other side says more danger, and I split them into 2 different sides where they were kind of evenly matched, the teams on each side, and the danger side led to Greymane, and Greymane needed people to fight for him. And then on the other side we had, of course, Baku, and Baku needed people to fight for him, so the teams each had to make either even or odd decks depending on which side they ended up on, and then it was an even versus odd battle, and in the end, the Greymane, the even side, won, because I guess pre-release even is pretty good. Or maybe those players were just really good. Alright, and then finally we go on to the last scene, which is the swamp. And this is where things get really dramatic, and they go deeper into the swamp. And they find Hagatha's lair. And then Hagatha comes out of the lair, and she is happy that they've done all of her games so far. But this is the finale, and she actually reaches out and casts spells and turns one player from each team into like a polymorph target. And that was the trick from earlier, where I had them each given like a piece of paper. The paper actually led to one of these websites where they have been chosen, and they have a secret role, and they have to copy their deck code and then make a pre-made deck, basically, that's like a much more difficult deck, and they're all themed. So one of them was like a dinosaur deck, and he was like a brontosaurus with giant sharp spiky teeth. One was a Murloc King, and there was a demon, and there was a big pile of beasts. That was a hunter deck. So once that happened, each of the teams had to choose one of the bosses to fight, and there was this big climactic battle at the end, and they got huge amount of bonus XP if they were able to beat the bosses. And then they defeated Hagatha. And Hagatha released the Innkeeper, and everyone went back to the inn to party and have a very good time. But they had all experienced the Witchwood, and what an adventure that was, and it's just lingering on their mind how they can't wait to go back into the Witchwood, and that's how they're hyped, and they can't wait to come back next week to the pack opening party that I'm going to be hosting, which is going to be at the same venue. So yeah, there's that's the adventure, and that's the hype, and yeah, wait, where is it? Yep, that's the end. So yeah, I hope you like this. The pack opening party I'm doing next week is going to be Hearthstone Bingo, and then we're going to do a co-op monster hunt as a big group, and then we're going to break into teams and kind of make some decks and play decks against each other, and it should be a good time. So have fun with your adventures into the Witchwood, guys.